So some 7 or 8 years ago, I watched a Sonic State episode with Alessandro from 9 Inch Nails doing a rig showdown for a live performance that he was doing with 9 Inch Nails, and he had a Tascam Portastudio, and I absolutely fell in love with the thing. I started scouting Reverb and eBay, and unfortunately everybody had the same idea and the prices were sky high. I wasn't willing to pay insane prices for a piece of kit from 30 years ago, so I sort of gave up on it. But a few months ago, I managed to find a pretty beaten up one on eBay, and I gave it a go. It's not in good conditions, but it's a lot of fun. So here it is in all its beauty, if I can say so myself. So as I said, this is in pretty bad conditions. It has this burn over here, which... please tell me how the hell they managed to do this. I'm really not sure. And here there used to be a sticker, if you can see this on camera, but it says Neil Sharman. So Neil, if you used to have a Portastudio 414, I have it now. In case you're not familiar with a 414, pretty simple. It's a 4-track cassette recorder. For each track you have panning, so you can, for example, set it as 2 sets of stereo tracks, which I've been doing a lot. You have an EQ on each channel, which is pretty cool because it sounds really bad in a good way. 2 independent effects send and return, which is pretty cool if you want to use it with guitar pedals. And you can have 2 separate line outs. Well, one is line out and the other one is technically a monitoring out, but you can use it as a separate line out if you want to do some interesting routing. And just a word on the cassettes that you're going to use. So as Heimbach says, if you want to use the Portastudio to get some crunch and distorted sound, it doesn't really matter whatever cassette you use. But if you want to use it for music, I really recommend you finding cassettes that are Type 2, which are the ones made especially for music and not for dictaphones or voice recording or things like that. Another cool thing to have with Portastudios is to have tape loops, so that you can use them for ambient soundscapes, just having a loop running and processing in different ways. I'm not good at all in doing them, but apparently it's very easy. I didn't even try, and I just bought them off Etsy. So I got this 7 minutes one, which is cool for very long soundscapes. I even have a 12-minute one actually, and I have this little 4 seconds one, which is fun to do some cool processing over here. And the cool thing about the Portastudio is that it's incredibly performable. You got this pitch knob, which goes down a minor third, which it's a lot of fun, and I personally very much like the fact that it goes exactly a minor third down, because you can repitch samples. I'm going to show you how to do all this stuff right now. But also the EQ is very performable. It has like an incredibly good crunch to it. Let's play with this thing. You're probably now thinking of a million different things that you can do with the Portastudio, and you would be absolutely right. The 414 is a great tool to have in your arsenal. But I'm a media composer, and as such I use samples. I love samples and I love making my own samples, and that is the one thing that I've been using my Portastudio the most for, which is processing samples and making them unique. So let's make some samples together. In fact, let's make just one sample, because I want to use this video as an excuse to show you how much you can get done with just one sample. So I'm here in Cubase, and I just grabbed one of my synths, a Minilog XD, and I recorded a C3, a pretty standard raw oscillator kind of sound with the filter all the way open. Not terribly interesting, but let's try and making it cool with the help of the Portastudio. Let's have a quick look at the routing. So I simply routed, I set up a send actually to the Portastudio through an analog out of my audio interface that goes here in input 1 and 2 of the Portastudio. Very simple. So we're using the first 2 channels, and then I set up a return track in Cubase over here. And the important thing that you want to do is that when you do a send to the Portastudio, please ignore all the other stuff in my template. It's important to put it to pre-fader. And the reason why you want to do this is that in this way you have a way to both hear the dry signal together with the one coming from the Portastudio, but you can also put the fader all the way down and you'll still have a send to the Portastudio. Let's have a listen to how it sounds. Here in Cubase I looped the sample and I put the fader of the analog poly track all the way down, but we're sending everything to the Portastudio. So if I start raising the channel here, I should get a sync sound. There you go. And by the way, you want to make sure that you're on mic line because we are still only figuring out the input. Let's have a listen to this EQ. I can sort of overdrive. If I bring the master down and try and overdrive this, you get some really cool distortion. But this really is only the first step. What you want to do is to record this on tape. Let's do it. Okay, let me grab my trusty Type 2 cassette and let's plug it in. And by the way, one thing that I didn't mention is that one thing that I need to do ASAP is to change the belt for this thing. It makes a monstrous noise. Listen to this. Not the quietest thing to have in the studio. But let's rewind it so that we know that we are just at the beginning of the tape. It's gonna take a while, so I'm gonna speed this up. Okay, we're ready to go. This took quite a while. And let's bring the EQ back to the 12 o'clock position so that you can record as clean as it gets. I'm gonna put the fader more or less here. Let's have a quick look at the level, check at the level. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit record and then press play on Cubase. Okay, hopefully I grab this. Let's listen back to it. So now I need to change the input to tape. And here's my sound. So let's try and have some fun with this one. So as I said, the first thing that you want to do is that we might saturate it a little bit. And let's play with the EQ. Listen to that tape hiss, really cool. It's fun. So I'm going to give a boost to the EQ and get the tape hiss quite high. And how about we try and record with the pitch down? So now this C3 should be an A. Let's listen to it. Quick check with the piano. Let's see if it's indeed an A. It is. Okay, cool. So let's record. Let's arm the Portastudio input. I'm gonna click on record here in Cubase and press play here. Cool, there you go. And now another thing that I really love doing is to re-record this and stretch it down another minor third to have an even longer file. Let's do that. Since we're doing this, let's go even more extreme. So I brought the faders down a little bit and cranked the preamps up for even more saturation. And I brought the EQ high a bit down so that we don't get hiss over hiss. I mean, we like hiss, but too much hiss is too much. Another cool trick that you can do is to record with the pitch control all the way up so that you have a minor third and another minor third going down, if it makes sense. You can really stretch the tape. So let's make sure that we are on mic line and press record and play on Cubase. Cool. And now if I rewind and break the input to tape, and we'll listen to it, and you can bring it down. Really cool. I love this. So let's re-record back into Cubase this one. Okay, it's armed. Let's make sure the input is on tape so that we're playing back the cassette. And let's hit record on Cubase and play. Okay, I gave the sample a quick chop, but I need to work out which note it is because we did so many transpositions. So it was an A, we brought it down 2 minor thirds, so it should be an E flat. Let's try the piano. Sounds about right, so we're ready to export it. I'm gonna call it Portastudio E flat, export. And now I can open a new instance of Kontakt. Okay, let's drag and drop our newly created sample in. Let's go under the hood. Let's open the mapping editor, and we want to change the root key to E flat 2. And now I should have an instrument in tune. Alright, let's play with this a little bit. Okay, first thing first, let's have some reverb because it always helps having sound during the sound design process. And another thing that I want to do is to set a loop on this one so that we don't run out of sample, so to speak. So let's add a looping point over here. I can loop the crossfade here maybe, or something like that. That's good enough. It's good enough. So the first thing that we can experiment with is trying the different playback algorithm. So one that I really love, for example, is Stone Machine. It's already quite interesting, and let's bring the release up a little bit and the attack as well. So now one thing that you notice is that with Time Machine, Tone Machine, and anything that involves time stretching, you lose the possibility of crossfading your loops. So that might be an issue for you, unless you simply don't use it as a one-off sample. And the cool thing with those is that you can speed it up or slow it down, which typically sounds really cool. Adjusting the sample start a little bit. Let's start with one of the two time machines. The second one is cool. For this one, I would also bring it down 1 octave. Let's see how it sounds. Oh yes. And then if you put it on zone, this will follow the BPM of your session. This is nothing rhythmical at the moment, it's just a pad, but it can lead to interesting results nonetheless. And so if I now bring the time of my session up to, say, 170, it will sound different. Or down to, say, 100 or to 20. And if you want to have fun this way, you can even put it to a beat machine, even if this originally made for drums. It's gonna try to slice it up and it won't find any transient, so it won't work. But you can have a lot of fun with this. Let's try on the octave below. And let's bring it up to 140. You can get really creative and resample this to death, essentially. I invite you to really experiment with the others, but let's bring it back to tone machine. Let's get rid of the grid. Let's bring our session back to 60, I believe it was, or something like that. And we don't need to bring it to zone, but let's bring it to default, and let's move with the speed knob. And by the way, there is also something to say to leave it to sampler, which is essentially just playing it back. Because when you stretch one sample throughout the keyboard, very low down in the range, it will sound super stretched out, and it won't be very playable because you will have different level of responsiveness if you play up here, as opposed as playing down here. It'll be super slow. But for creepy soundscapes, this sounds super cool, I think. Nice. And finally, one thing that I want to show you is how cool using replica delay in diffusion mode rather than as a delay is. So to do this, you put it on diffusion mode and you can play a little bit with this. And then obviously go absolutely crazy with the effects. One thing that I really love is the beat crusher here, which is called lo-fi. certainly lots of fun to be had. Hopefully it's clear that the purpose of this video, more than showing you some semi-vintage piece of equipment, is showing you how much you can make out of just one sample. I would love to do way more of these things with you, so please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.